Good morning, year six. I hope you're well and looking forward to your week. If you have already had your English and math sessions, great stuff, and I hopefully seen you on the Zoom call. If not, then I look forward to seeing you soon. And Ranish, I'm sure you might even have got out your pajamas this time. Let's see. Okie dokie, guys. We're carrying on with Private Peaceful, and to be successful in today's lesson, we need to read elements of chapter 4 together, and then we're also going to try and draw some inferences from that. Now, when we're doing that, we need to consider what the question is asking us to think about. We need to understand what we think a character believes. We need to think about why they might have that belief, and then we need to support our version of events, our perspective on the inference we've made with evidence from the text. And again, as I always say, that can be a direct quotation or it can be specific details that underpin your point. Okay, guys, we're going to start today on page 47. We're looking today at this first page. It's not a task to do apart from to engage with this task. I'm not sure this page. I ever really believed in God, even in Sunday school. In church, I gaze up at Jesus hanging on the cross in a stained glass window and feel sorry for him because I could see how cruel it was and how much it must be hurting him. I knew he was a good and kind man, but I never really understood why God, who was supposed to be his father and almighty and powerful, would let them do that to him, would let him suffer so much. I'd never understand that. I believe them as I believe now that crossed fingers and Molly Stones are every bit as reliable or unreliable as praying to God. I shouldn't think that because if there's no God, then there can be no heaven. Tonight, I want very much to believe that there's a heaven. That, as Father said, there is a new life after death, that death is not a full stop and that we will see one another again. Here, I can see this idea that this character is not very happy about what's about to happen. They're worried about whether or not there is heaven, and they're worried that if there isn't heaven, then there's nowhere for them to go. And they're therefore thinking that they must be entering the end of their life. So I'm starting to infer that. It was while Molly was ill in bed with the scarlet fever that Charlie and I discovered that although in one way Molly Stones had let us down, in another way they had indeed spoken the truth. With her, with the three of us together, we were lucky, and without her, we weren't. Up until now, whenever the three of us had gone out together poaching the Colonel's fish, we had never been caught. We had a few close shaves with old Lambert and his dog, but our lookout system had always worked. Somehow, we'd always heard them coming and managed to make ourselves scarce. But the very first time Charlie and I went out poaching without Molly, things went wrong, badly wrong, and it was my fault. We had chosen a perfect poaching night, not a breath of wind, so we could hear anyone coming. With Molly beside me on lookout, I'd never felt sleepy, and we'd always heard out our old Lambert and his dog in plenty of time for Charlie to get out of the river, for us all to make good our escape. But on this particular night, my concentration failed me. I'd made myself comfortable, probably too comfortable, in our usual place by the bridge, with Charlie netting downstream. But after sitting there for a while, I just fell asleep. I don't drop off at all easily, but when I do sleep, I sleep deeply. The first I knew of anything was a dog snuffling at my neck. Then he was barking in my face, and old Lambert was dragging me to my feet. And there was Charlie way out in the middle of the moonlit river, hauling at the nets. Ha ha, peaceful boys, you young rascals, Lambert growled. Caught you red-handed. You're for it now. Make no mistake. So after reading that, I've thought about a little about the language used. So this phrase of make ourselves scarce, if I pick it out in the text, I can look around it. I can look around it earlier in the passage where I see earlier on they've had a few close shaves. That doesn't mean they've shaved their face closely. It references the idea that they've come close to cutting themselves. They've come close to being caught. A close shave is nearly but not quite getting caught. So what have they been caught previously, or not been caught but nearly been caught previously doing? Poaching. When they've been poaching, old Lambert and his dog have been looking to make sure nobody's poaching on the Colonel's land. I can see that from this context. And here I can see that this time they've got caught because previously they've been able to make themselves scarce. Okay, somehow we'd always heard them coming. So previously, with Molly by his side, Tommy had always alerted Charlie to Lambert and his dog coming. Make ourselves scarce. Okay, so how many syllables? 4 syllables. I break that passage, that phrase down into 4 syllables. So 4 syllables. Making yourself scarce is to hide, to get away from seekers. I've said seekers because it's not always predators. So some animals may wish to make themselves scarce from predators. But if you're playing hide and seek, you want to make yourself scarce. You don't want to be caught. Whenever Mr. Spring asks us to clean the paint pots, we always try and make ourselves scarce. So that means that you're always trying to get out of doing it. You always leave it up to Imani and Enos. Okay, so it's synonymous with hide or retreat. And then the antonym of it is when you reveal yourself, you show, you shout. It's the opposite of it. Reading on there. Charlie could have left me there. He could have made a run for it and got clean away, but Charlie's not like that. He's never been. I thought this is a really interesting passage again. It shows that reverence that Tommy's got for his brother. He keeps talking about the type of person, the type of brother that Charlie is. At the point of shotgun, Lambert marched us back along the river and up to the big house, his dog snarling at our heels from time to time just to remind us he was still there and they'd eat us alive if we'd made a run for it. Lambert locked us in the stables and left us. We waited in the darkness, the horses shifting and munching and snorting around us. All too soon we saw the approaching light of a lamp and heard footsteps and voices. Then the colonel was there in his slippers and his dressing gown, and he had Grandma Wolf with him in her nightcap, looking every bit as fierce as Lambert's dog. The colonel looked from one to the other, shaking his head in disgust. But Grandma Wolf had the first word. I have never in my life been so ashamed, she said. My own family, you're nothing but a downright disgrace. And after all the colonel's done for us, common thieves, that's what you are, nothing but common thieves. When she'd finished, it was the colonel's turn. Only one way to deal with young ruffians like you, he said. I could have you up before the magistrate, but since I'm the magistrate, there's no need to go to all that trouble, is there? I'll sentence you right now. You will come up here tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock sharp, and I'll give each of you the hiding you so richly deserve. Then you can stay and clean out the hunt kennels till I say you can go. That should teach you not to come poaching on my land. When we got home, we had to tell Mother everything. So just, sorry, on that page, you're looking at ruffian. We're going to do a little bit of a task around that. Think about the sentence it's within. Think about the context of the conversation, about how they're being spoken to. The final page here, sorry. When we got home, we had to tell Mother everything we'd done, everything the Colonel had said. Charlie did most of the talking. Mother sat listening in silence, her face stony. When she spoke in little more than a whisper. She spoke in little more than a whisper. I can tell you one thing, she said. There'll be no hiding over my dead body. Then she looked up at us, her eyes full of tears. Why? You said you'd been fishing in the brook. You told me. Oh, Charlie, Tomo. Big Joe stroked her hair. He was anxious and bewildered. She patted his arm. It's all right, Joe. I'll go up there tomorrow with them tomorrow. Cleaning out the kennels, I don't mind. You deserve that, boys. But it stops there. I won't let that man lay a finger on you. Not one finger, no matter what. Mother was as good as her word. How she did it and what was said, we never knew. But the next day, after Mother and the Colonel had had a meeting in his study, she made us stand in front of him and apologise. Then, after a long lecture about trespassing on private property, so a lecture about going onto illegally, which is trespassing on private property, the Colonel said he'd changed his mind and that instead of the hiding, we would be set to cleaning out the Colonel's kennels every Saturday and Sunday until Christmas. Okay, guys. So the hiding you so richly deserve is the phrase there. And thinking about what it's described at Ibin, the punishment that they might have been about to receive, who it was from, and this idea of them richly deserving it. Think about how you'll explain what that phrase means in your section. I think as well, it won't just be about when the writing was written. It's the passage it's in. It'll be about the impact of this threat on other people. How Mother reacts to them being threatened with the hiding that the Colonel feels they richly deserve. Okay, guys. So you've got two sections then today to do with that. Think about how you can complete the element about ruffians and then the element about the hiding you so richly deserve. You look all around for that context within those passages. Thinking back to page 47, where we look at that evidence on page 47, Tommy, like Joe, doesn't always think or behave as some people think he should. So the fact that, for me, the evidence there is that we know from that first passage that Tommy, our narrator, attended religious education. He went to Sunday school, but without he was going even though he didn't believe in it. And that's kind of unconventional for back then. If you think about how important religion was to education in the 1900s and well, the early 1900s, so just before the First World War, which is when this is set. Additionally, the fact he's already started to critique and question the decisions that God will have made in terms of his treatment of his son. So he believes a bit in Christianity, but he's questioning whether or not the choice to let his son die makes sense. Shows him that he's starting to develop this questioning persona. And this is quite an interesting way of evidencing him as a thoughtful character. Okay, guys, what I'd like you to do is try and get those 2 or 3 elements to each of your answers where you're drawing inferences about the Peaceful Boys, about Tommy, why he wasn't being left alone by Charlie when they were poaching and they got caught. Grandma Wolf's desire to speak first. What do you think about that? I think it's really interesting. I think it shows something of her personality that she wants to be the first to tell them off. Why do you think the Colonel gave the boys the 2 punishments? So it wasn't just about the hiding, there was another punishment. What were those 2 punishments? And what's the evidence on that final page, page 50, that the Peaceful's mother was not violent? Okie dokie, guys. So you've got the sections. Try and support your answers with clear evidence from the text, either a direct quotation or some references to the names or features of the text. And then, guys, I think you'll have done a really successful job at drawing influences and making inferences from the text. Thank you as ever for your input. I really look forward to reading how you've got on reading those 4 pages and thinking about those inferences, so how you can evidence, how you can pull out that information which supports your point. Thank you again, Year 6. Really, really interested to see what you do. Really interested to see how you address that.